Tyler Brooks stood at Lincoln High School's entrance. His worn navy blazer pressed meticulously that morning, despite its frayed cuffs. His 11-year-old daughter Sophie squeezed his hand, her perceptive eyes sensing the nervousness he tried to hide about facing ghosts from 20 years ago. The class of 2003 banner hung above familiar hallways that still made him feel like the outsider he'd been as a teenager. These days, Tyler had bigger worries than high school memories. Anonymous complaints about promoting an LGBTQ agenda had been filed against his teaching. Whispers spreading through the conservative parent network simply because he mentored struggling students at Portland Pride Center on weekends. Sophie beamed with pride about her father's volunteer work, unable to understand why helping scared teenagers feel less alone could be controversial to anyone with a heart. The evening's atmosphere shifted dramatically when Marcus Chen, now a billionaire tech CEO, received recognition for his educational software empire that serves schools across 48 states. Tyler remembered Marcus very differently. The boy who had made his teenage years miserable with cruel pranks, cutting words, and systematic humiliation that left invisible scars across his adolescent psyche. Their worlds couldn't be more different now. Tyler scraped by on a teacher's modest salary while Marcus commanded corporate boardrooms and influenced national education policy. Yet both men carried invisible burdens that money and status couldn't heal. The exhausting weight of being seen as something other than who they truly were. The constant performance of respectability in spaces that questioned their right to exist. When Brad Morrison, now a prominent school board member, approached their table with his familiar, condescending smirk and loud opinions about diversity hires destroying merit and inappropriate role models corrupting children, the evening's underlying tension crystallized into something sharp and dangerous. His words targeted both men's identities with calculated precision, cutting deep into wounds that had never properly healed. Something unexpected shifted in that moment. Two men who had never been allies, who carried decades of complicated history between them, suddenly recognized a common enemy in the prejudice that refused to see them as complete human beings. Marcus faced assumptions that his success was handed to him because of his race, rather than earned through brilliance and hard work. Tyler confronted whispers questioning his fitness to shape young minds simply because of who he loved. Sophie observed everything with the startling clarity that only children possess, understanding intuitively that her father and this elegant stranger shared something deeper than their complicated past. They were both fighting battles that required more courage than most people could imagine, standing up to systems designed to diminish their humanity while maintaining dignity in the face of institutional hostility. The gymnasium filled with classmates who had aged into middle-aged professionals, some successful, others struggling, all carrying the weight of dreams deferred and compromises made. But in this moment, Tyler and Marcus found themselves united by something more powerful than nostalgia or regret. They discovered solidarity and shared vulnerability, strength in mutual recognition of each other's hidden pain. As Brad Morrison continued his performance of righteous indignation for an audience of nodding parents, Tyler and Marcus exchanged a look that transcended their personal history. They were no longer the bully and his victim, no longer the popular kid and the outcast. They were two men who understood what it meant to live authentically in a world that punished difference. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are fighting wars we cannot see, and healing begins when we recognize our shared humanity beneath the surface wounds. Subscribe to Heart Stories, where every conflict holds the possibility of unexpected connection. The gymnasium's ambient noise faded as Marcus Chen approached Tyler's table with measured steps, polished leather shoes clicking against worn linoleum. Up close, the intervening years showed differently on both men's faces. Marcus carried himself with boardroom confidence, but something vulnerable flickered in his dark eyes when he looked directly at Tyler. Marcus cleared his throat softly. The words came measured yet genuine. He spoke about the insecure boy he had been underneath teenage bravado, desperate to belong somewhere in the rigid social hierarchy, lashing out at anyone who seemed comfortable in their own skin because their authenticity highlighted his own profound insecurity. Tyler had represented everything Marcus secretly feared about himself. The dangerous courage to be authentic in a world that demanded conformity at every turn. Where Marcus had learned to hide his difference behind performance and achievement, Tyler had simply existed as himself, reading poetry during lunch breaks and never apologizing for his sensitivity. The apology was more comprehensive than Tyler had ever expected. Marcus explained with painful honesty how his immigrant parents had drilled into him the absolute importance of never standing out for the wrong reasons, never giving anyone a reason to question his place in America or his family's right to prosperity. Being different meant being vulnerable, and vulnerability meant potential failure. The model minority myth had been both protection and prison, demanding perfection while denying authentic self-expression. So 15-year-old Marcus had targeted the quiet boy who read poetry, seeing in Tyler's openness a dangerous example of what he could never allow himself to become. Tyler listened with growing complexity of emotion, processing decades of pain through this new lens. Marcus continued speaking, his voice dropping as other reunion guests mingled around their table, creating an intimate bubble amidst the larger chaos of reconnection. He revealed the ongoing pressure he still felt, even as a successful CEO commanding respect in Silicon Valley, to be the perfect model minority who never made waves. His company's board questioned every decision through the filter of his race, assuming his LGBTQ advocacy was either calculated publicity or poor business judgment. Sophie approached with fearless curiosity, asking Marcus directly why adults seemed determined to make everything so complicated. Her father helped kids who were scared. Marcus made software that helped schools teach better. Yet people like Brad Morrison acted as though they were plotting something sinister. Marcus smiled genuinely at her directness. The expression transforming his face as he admitted fear made people cruel. He told Sophie about scholarship programs his company funded for LGBTQ students trying to access education despite family rejection. Many recipients reminded him of Tyler, young people with quiet strength who deserve support rather than judgment. Tyler felt something shift inside his chest. Anger he had carried for years like armor against hurt, beginning to transform into something more complex and useful. He recognized the isolation Marcus described, the exhausting performance of hiding essential parts of yourself to survive in hostile environments. When Brad Morrison interrupted with loud opinions about diversity quotas and special treatment, undermining American meritocracy, both men stood together instinctively. Marcus calmly corrected Brad's assumptions about his success, detailing the extra barriers he had navigated as an Asian American in tech. While Tyler spoke about the courage required to mentor vulnerable students under constant scrutiny, Sophie watched this exchange with bright eyes, understanding intuitively that her father and Marcus were teaching Brad something important about respect and dignity. She had grown up in Portland's progressive bubble, but was learning that acceptance required constant vigilance, even in places claiming to welcome everyone. The evening's tension began dissolving as other classmates gathered, drawn by the unusual sight of former outcast and billionaire CEO in genuine conversation. Some approached with curiosity, others with opportunism. But Tyler and Marcus had found something unexpected and precious in each other. True healing requires acknowledging systems that deliberately pit marginalized people against each other rather than addressing root causes of prejudice and discrimination. The week following the reunion brought consequences neither Tyler nor Marcus had anticipated. Tyler's phone buzzed insistently Monday morning with a terse message from Principal Wallace requesting immediate presence for an urgent meeting about mounting parent concerns regarding his curriculum choices and extracurricular involvement. Tyler sat across from Wallace's imposing desk, watching the administrator shuffle through a thick stack of printed emails, formal complaints, and social media screenshots. The complaints questioned whether a teacher who openly supported LGBTQ students could maintain professional objectivity when discussing literature, history, or any subject touching on social issues. Someone had photographed Tyler during volunteer hours at Portland Pride Center, circulating images through parent Facebook groups with inflammatory captions about recruiting vulnerable children to a dangerous political agenda. The photos showed him helping teenagers with homework and leading discussion groups, but accompanying text painted these activities as evidence of inappropriate grooming behavior. Meanwhile, Marcus faced his own mounting crisis during what should have been a routine quarterly board meeting. The atmosphere grew tense when lead investor Patricia Blackwell raised concerns about the company's recent advocacy initiatives and their potential impact on market share in conservative regions. Stock prices had experienced a noticeable dip following negative coverage from conservative media outlets criticizing their inclusive education software, with several rural school districts threatening to cancel contracts worth millions in annual revenue. Board members, previously supportive of Marcus's leadership, now questioned whether his personal convictions were clouding business judgment. Marcus maintained composure while board members debated financial implications of his public statements about LGBTQ youth mental health. Blackwell suggested he consider stepping back from controversial positions to protect shareholder interests and preserve the company's reputation for political neutrality. The ripple effects reached Sophie's middle school, where she experienced firsthand the casual cruelty of children repeating parents' conversations without understanding the implications. Classmates whispered about her father's involvement with what they called weird kids and dangerous people, their young voices echoing adult prejudices with disturbing precision. During lunch, Madison Torres announced loudly that her mother had explained how Tyler was secretly trying to turn normal children gay through manipulation and psychological pressure. The accusation hung in the cafeteria air like toxic smoke, while Sophie's face burned with confusion and rage. She didn't have words to express. That evening, Sophie found Tyler surrounded by student papers needing grading, his expression heavy with worry and exhaustion. She asked with devastating directness whether he might lose his job simply for helping scared teenagers feel less alone in the world. Tyler set down his red pen and struggled to find age-appropriate language, explaining how fear could transform decent people into agents of cruelty, how systemic prejudice operated through networks of seemingly normal individuals believing they were protecting families and communities from imaginary threats. Marcus called later, his voice strained but determined as they compared notes about respective professional challenges. Both men had underestimated how quickly their reunion conversation would ripple outward through social media and local news coverage, creating controversies they had never intended to spark. Local media had picked up the story of unlikely alliance between struggling public school teacher and billionaire technology entrepreneur, framing their partnership as either inspiring evidence of cross-class cooperation or dangerous coordination between radical activists, depending on the outlet's political orientation. The Portland School Board scheduled an emergency session to address mounting community concerns about appropriate boundaries between educators and political advocacy organizations. Brad Morrison had submitted a formal petition signed by over 200 parents demanding comprehensive investigation into Tyler's fitness for classroom instruction. Corporate lawyers advised Marcus to distance himself from controversial figures like Tyler to protect the company's reputation and market position. Educational technology remained a volatile industry where public perception often mattered more than actual product quality, and one wrong move could cost millions while destroying years of relationship building. Both men found themselves at professional and personal crossroads they had never expected to navigate, facing choices that would define not only their own futures, but their ability to continue advocating for vulnerable young people who depended on their support. Tyler confronted a stark choice between his conviction that all students deserved unconditional support, regardless of identity, and his practical need to maintain stable employment, providing health insurance and financial security for Sophie's educational future. Marcus wrestled with tension between authentic values and strategic compromises required to sustain a business employing thousands while serving diverse communities with varying levels of social acceptance and political sophistication. Sophie watched her father struggle with decisions no caring adult should have to make, her young mind processing the absurd reality that helping lonely children had somehow become grounds for professional persecution and public shaming. The systemic nature of their challenges became clear as both men realized they were fighting not just individual prejudice, but entrenched institutional resistance to meaningful change, threatening existing power structures and cultural hierarchies. Change requires recognizing how systems deliberately discourage the very alliances needed to transform them effectively and sustainably. The emergency school board meeting filled Lincoln High's auditorium beyond capacity, with overflow crowds gathering in the parking lot and streaming proceedings live through social media. Tyler sat in the front row beside Marcus, both aware this moment would define not only their futures, but their community's direction on inclusion and educational equity. Principal Wallace presented the formal complaint against Tyler with obvious reluctance, reading detailed accusations about inappropriate political advocacy, boundary violations with vulnerable students, and alleged use of taxpayer-funded positions to advance controversial social agendas, contradicting community values and parental rights. Parent after parent approached the microphone voicing heated concerns about their children's exposure to what they characterize as radical ideologies disguised as education and mental health support. Complaints ranged from vague worries about political indoctrination to specific demands for Tyler's immediate suspension, pending investigation by outside authorities. Brad Morrison took the podium with practiced political authority, brandishing manila folders stuffed with printouts of Tyler's social media posts supporting LGBTQ students, photographs from Pride Center events, and testimonials from other parents about alleged classroom bias. He argued with rhetorical skill that public school teachers had no business promoting lifestyle choices, contradicting family values while being paid by taxpayer dollars. The auditorium erupted in sustained applause from one vocal faction, while another significant portion sat in tense silence, creating an atmosphere thick with unspoken division and barely contained hostility. Sophie watched from the back row beside Mrs. Patel, processing the shocking reality of adults directing genuine hatred toward her father for caring about frightened teenagers. Marcus rose to speak without official invitation, his commanding CEO presence immediately capturing everyone's attention. He addressed the school board directly with calm authority, explaining how successful educational technology companies necessarily depended on creating learning environments where all students could achieve full potential regardless of identity, background, or family circumstances. He presented carefully researched statistics demonstrating that LGBTQ students consistently showed higher suicide rates, dramatically lower academic achievement, and significantly increased dropout rates in unsupportive school environments compared to peers in inclusive settings. These weren't abstract political issues, but urgent public health concerns affecting entire communities through lost human potential and increased social services costs. The audience stirred uneasily as Marcus detailed economic research showing how discriminatory policies drove away talented workers, innovative companies, and educated families, citing specific examples of Fortune corporations that had relocated operations from states with hostile social climates, taking thousands of jobs and millions in tax revenue to more welcoming destinations. Tyler finally stood with deliberate composure, his voice steady despite feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes evaluating his every word. He spoke directly to parents in the audience, acknowledging legitimate concerns about their children's well-being while sharing carefully anonymized stories of students he had helped navigate difficult periods. He described the 17-year-old girl who had stopped self-harming after finding acceptance in the literature discussion group where she felt safe expressing authentic thoughts. He spoke about the 15-year-old boy whose grades improved dramatically once he connected with adult mentors who understood his struggles with identity and family rejection. These weren't theoretical political debates, but real children in their community who deserve compassion and support rather than suspicion and hostility from adults responsible for their education and development. Sophie surprised everyone by standing up in the packed auditorium, her clear young voice somehow carrying across the hushed space with remarkable authority. She asked with devastating simplicity why so many adults seemed terrified of her father helping kids who felt different or alone, when difference was simply another way of being human and loneliness was something everyone experienced. The room fell into complete silence as this 11-year-old articulated with innocent directness what many adults had struggled to express through layers of political rhetoric and ideological positioning. Her question cut through months of inflammatory debate to expose the fundamental human truth that kindness and compassion should never be controversial or threatening. Board member Patricia Henderson, who had remained carefully neutral throughout the contentious proceedings, began asking pointed questions about specific allegations against Tyler. Under sustained scrutiny from someone with legal training, accusations gradually revealed themselves as vague concerns and unsupported assumptions, rather than concrete violations of professional standards or district policies. The formal vote, when it finally came after hours of testimony and deliberation, proved closer than anyone had predicted. 3 board members voted to support Tyler's continued employment, recognizing that helping struggling students fell clearly within appropriate teaching responsibilities and community service expectations. 2 members voted for immediate suspension, citing intense community pressure and concerns about political polarization affecting the district's ability to serve all families effectively, regardless of personal beliefs or political affiliations. The deciding vote belonged to Henderson, who spoke movingly about her own gay nephew and the high school teacher who had literally saved his life by treating him with dignity and respect during his darkest period of family rejection and suicidal ideation. Tyler would retain his position, but with new requirements for documentation and administrative oversight. Marcus announced his company's formal commitment to funding comprehensive anti-bullying programs throughout Portland area schools, partnering with established local LGBTQ organizations to provide evidence-based training and ongoing resources for educators and students alike. Outside the auditorium in cool evening air, Tyler and Marcus stood together as crowds slowly dispersed, some celebrating this victory for inclusion, while others muttered ominously about recall elections and appeals to state authorities. Sophie ran to her father with tears of relief and pride, finally understanding why doing the right thing sometimes required extraordinary courage. Individual courage in the face of systematic institutional resistance creates powerful ripple effects that can transform entire communities far beyond the scope of the original conflict. 1 year later, the Oregon LGBTQ Youth Foundation launch event filled the Portland Convention Center's main ballroom to capacity, with representatives from educational institutions, social service organizations, and advocacy groups throughout the Pacific Northwest. Tyler stood confidently at the podium as the newly appointed statewide coordinator for inclusive education initiatives, his voice steady and authoritative as he addressed the diverse audience. The foundation Marcus had created using his company's substantial resources had already exceeded ambitious first-year goals, providing full college scholarships to over 200 deserving students, establishing emergency safe housing for homeless LGBTQ youth in 3 major cities, and training more than 1,500 teachers across multiple states in evidence-based anti-bullying intervention strategies. Sophie, now 12 and visibly confident as president of her middle school's Student Diversity and Inclusion Club, watched proudly from the front row beside Mrs. Patel, who had become an honorary grandmother figure in their unconventional family structure. Sophie had emerged as a powerful advocate in her own right, organizing fellow students to create genuinely inclusive school environments where everyone felt valued regardless of their differences. Marcus took the stage to thunderous applause, announcing the foundation's ambitious expansion into national policy advocacy work aimed at protecting LGBTQ students' rights in educational settings across the country. His technology company had successfully transitioned to become a certified B Corporation, legally requiring them to prioritize measurable social impact alongside traditional profit maximization. Several major investors had initially objected strenuously to this fundamental shift in corporate priorities, but overwhelming public support from consumers and extraordinary loyalty from existing clients had ultimately vindicated Marcus's controversial decision to put principles before pure profit margins. The evening's most powerful moment came when Brad Morrison approached the podium, his usually confident demeanor replaced by visible emotion as he shared his personal journey from vocal opponent to committed advocate for LGBTQ youth rights and educational inclusion. His estranged son had reached out tentatively after seeing extensive news coverage of the foundation's launch and the positive community impact of Tyler and Marcus's partnership. This contact had opened a painful but ultimately healing dialogue that had remained completely silent for over 3 difficult years following his son's decision to leave Oregon rather than continue living in a hostile family environment. Brad spoke with genuine vulnerability about the profound courage Tyler and Marcus had demonstrated in standing up to institutional resistance and community hostility, acknowledging how their inspiring example had forced him to examine his own deeply held fears and unconscious prejudices about difference and acceptance. The applause was sustained and genuine when Tyler and Marcus announced their engagement during the evening's conclusion, with Sophie proudly serving as the officiant for their wedding ceremony planned for the following summer in the same high school gymnasium where their unlikely partnership had first begun during that contentious but transformative school board meeting. The Portland model of community-based advocacy and corporate educational partnership had inspired similar successful initiatives in dozens of cities across the country, with school districts actively requesting training programs and major corporations following Marcus's leadership example by prioritizing inclusive policies benefiting both employees and surrounding communities. State and federal legislative victories in Oregon had resulted in comprehensive legal protections for LGBTQ students' rights and dedicated funding for evidence-based anti-discrimination programs that were now being studied and replicated by policy researchers throughout North America and Europe. During the reception, Sophie reflected with remarkable wisdom about how dramatically their lives had changed since that reunion night when her father and Marcus first discovered their unexpected connection and shared commitment to protecting vulnerable young people from institutional hostility. She understood now that achieving justice required ordinary people to find extraordinary courage when existing systems failed to protect the most vulnerable members of society, and that authentic love could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances when people chose vulnerability over safety. Tyler and Marcus had demonstrated through their personal and professional partnership that meaningful change occurred when different communities found common ground in their shared humanity and worked together to create more inclusive and compassionate institutions serving everyone's interests rather than protecting existing privilege and power structures. The transformation from individual courage to systemic change had created lasting benefits that would impact generations of young people who would never again have to choose between authenticity and acceptance in their educational environments. Have you ever witnessed how individual courage and authentic partnership can spark systemic transformation in your own community or workplace? Share your story in the comments below, where it might inspire others facing similar challenges. Subscribe to Heart Stories, where every voice matters and love always wins over fear.